Welcome to the basic openings course on structured chess training. If you're doing this after your basic tactics and strategy course, then fantastic. If not, I really suggest you to check out those first because you'll get more out of this course if you've already somewhat skilled in tactics and you can recognize some of the main strategic ideas that we will discuss in different openings here. So, this course will work a bit differently to the others because normally in most courses here we start with an introduction video and then we have a list of videos and exercises to follow in sequence until we reach the final conclusion. But here we will work in a different way because it doesn't really make sense to study all the openings in parallel. Instead, different players will choose different openings and I will try to give an overview, introduction to each of the different openings. And so you may be interested in checking out some, but not all. So yeah, it doesn't really follow the same logic to follow a playlist with all the videos in sequence. So just to make you aware of that. So it's important to keep in mind that chess is a two-player game, so there's a common misconception among beginners when studying openings, so they will learn one opening and expect them to work in every situation, and that just really doesn't work like that. For instance, they may have learned the fried liver attack, or they may have played against it and want to learn it, so then they start a game like this, and we get this position where now g5 starts the fried liver attack or the fegatello attack. Maybe you can find it by that name too. But the problem is there are many times where black will play different moves. So maybe black plays bishop c5, entering an Italian game, a gioco piano, or they could play anything. They could play d6, they could play g6, and if we go a move back, they may have played knight f6 over here, or d6 here, or many different types of moves. The point I'm trying to make with this is that we cannot really be ready against every single possible response. So there's a limit to our opening knowledge, and we get specific knowledge for specific positions. But we also have to understand the scope in which it applies. So that's maybe just as important as knowing the details inside of each of the courses, inside of each of the lines that we're learning. So what we build is an opening repertoire. So that means a set of openings that combined together help us cover as many possibilities as we can. So for instance, we will learn something to start as white, and we can learn maybe e4, or we can learn d4, or we can learn knight f3, or we can learn c4. But in a game, in each specific individual game, we only will play one of those moves. So it doesn't really make as much sense to study all those four moves separately as it does to go deeper into one of the moves. So we may become an e4 player and we learn a lot about different e4 openings. But maybe we don't know as much about d4 or knight f3 or other moves. We can use it on occasion, maybe as a surprise weapon against an opponent we know will counter really well our main move. But really, we gotta be practical since there are so many openings and we can't possibly learn them all. Of course, it's fine to introduce some variety, but just the main idea that we gotta become mostly specialists. Okay, so what openings are we really gonna cover here? Once we make our choice, like with e4, let's say we want to play e4, now we gotta cover the main responses by black. Of course, we have c5, we have e5, we got e6, we got c6, the Caro-Kann defense. So all those moves are the main responses our opponent can make, and we gotta be somewhat prepared against most of them. But of course, the tree grows out rapidly, so we can't be ready against everything. At some point, sometimes it will happen sooner, sometimes it will happen later, but at some point, we won't be able to rely on our memory and the things we've learned, and we gotta start thinking for ourselves. So that will be the point where the real game, the real contest begins. If you're watching this series immediately after I upload it, you may see that there are still some gaps to be covered, so I will try to, as quickly as possible, have a full repertoire with a set of openings for white and for black that cover at least the main responses against e4, and with black, so one option against e4 and d4. But yeah, beware that I will upload more videos over alternatives. So once I've built a full repertoire, I will start providing different options against different moves that you may want to try. So for instance, if we are going to explore openings as black and I upload a video on the French defense first, that's the one we will cover, you can use that. But maybe if you come in a couple of years, I will have a few different options against d4 and you get to choose which one to play. So ideally you can try out different ones. Don't be scared to test things. We're caring about long-term improvement. And then you choose the one that fits you the most. Of course, since I've already said a few times in this video, there are many different possibilities, so many that I cannot cover them all. So I will try to find a balance between giving you choice so that you don't have to stick strictly to my preferences, but I will also have to be opinionated sometimes and leave some things out and cover mostly options that I think are best and more practical. Okay, so with that out of the way, I want to talk about some misconceptions that beginners usually have about openings, and casual players, even club players up to some level also have some of these misconceptions. And so the rest of the video will serve as a common introduction, a common point that will apply to basically any choice of openings that you make from here on. Okay, so some players really believe the reason they don't progress is that their opponents know too much opening theory and they cannot keep up with them. But this only really applies at top level, where openings become a limiting factor. If you're playing in the sub 2000 ELO range, or even a bit beyond that, there's a good chance that even after a bad opening, you will have chances to recover the game. So your tactics, strategy, your end games will give you the chance to fight, even if your opening knowledge isn't that deep. I won't really fall for the trap of going all in into the opposite direction and say that beginners should let no openings. I don't think that's true. I think some knowledge about openings is good and is practical, but we gotta be smart about it, and we gotta know what we're actually learning. There's a lot of debate about what openings beginners should play. I think there are many different possibilities. So some will argue that you should play an aggressive e4 repertoire and then all main lines. Others will be geared more towards systems, like the London system, for instance, where you play really similar moves against everything. I think all options are fine as long as they help you develop the rest of your chess skills. So we will use openings not just to play the opening itself, but also as an excuse to go deeper into especially positional strategic themes that are common to some opening positions or some middle game positions that arise from the opening. For instance, if we play the open Sicilian like this, there are some themes that are common to these games. So we have a space advantage as white. We will have it in most games. There will be a lot of opposite sides castling, as white castles to the queen side and black castles to the king side, or sometimes leave the king in the center. There will be some situations where black makes this pawn push, leaving a weak square here on the center. So yeah, we'll have to cover the topic of weak squares. Of course, in future strategy courses, we will cover all situations at the general case of the weak square, but here in the Sicilian course, the Open Sicilian course, we will start to give some hints about how to use it in the specific context of the weak d5 square in the Sicilian. On the flip side, if we play this opening, we won't be getting that many pawn chains in the center. So, for instance, if we play the King's Indian, which would start like this, and after a few moves, we sometimes get a pawn chain in the center. So let's say the opening plays out like this. We will get a position of this type where there's a pawn chain in the center. You see these pawns that are locked against each other. And if you want to play the King's Indian effectively, we not only have to learn the theory of the opening, but we also need to be fluent in this type of pawn structure and know the typical strategic themes. So we're using it, the knowledge both ways. So our opening improves our strategic knowledge, and we use our strategic knowledge to be good and effective in the opening. Another common thing many beginners obsess about is traps, and I really don't think they are that important. So yeah, there are many opening traps, but if we care about long-term improvement, we shouldn't really worry too much. Of course, I won't give you disarmed against traps, and I will cover some of the more common traps on each of the openings. But if you find one that you didn't know before, it doesn't really matter. Okay, we lose a game and we learn from it and we analyze it, and now we know one more trappy line and how to fight against it. So yeah, it's important, of course, to review our game, so we can't be falling for the same trap like 50 times in a row. But still, let's say, as an example, we play the Petrov defense. And so we play like this. And we play here the move knight takes c4, which is dangerous. And now we retreat with the knight. And we lose our queen like this to this discovered attack. So, okay, we made a mistake once. Now we can review the game and realize what we should have played instead. For instance, here black can play d6, or there are other ways to avoid the trap. And we learn from it and we expand our knowledge with that. But we shouldn't really worry about knowing as many traps as possible, because yeah, they don't happen that often, and once we found them once, we've learned them. So there's no point in obsessing. We have to be aware of them. We have to be careful. Maybe when our opponent offers some sacrifice, we can understand that there could be a trick, but we shouldn't over worry about that, and we should focus on our opening training, on learning the main ideas, the main moves, and other things that are applicable to more situations. I will focus mostly on abstract strategic ideas in the different chapters dedicated to specific openings. There are some concrete lines that you have to learn, and sometimes beginners get this idea that openings are all about memorization, about committing to memory every possible move and every possible line that would happen. And on higher levels, that's important because openings get more and more complex. But at this stage, I will just focus on middle game plans and how the pieces should be developed, what pawn structures will arise and how we play around those. But specific move orders won't really play such an important role. Of course, in the situations where we can get in trouble by messing up the move order, I will pay attention to that. But yeah, that won't be really the focus of the course because that's not really necessary at this level yet. So yeah, you shouldn't worry about it, and you shouldn't be scared of openings. Be aware that your opponents are probably not that knowledgeable of openings, because it's really hard to know that many lines as a beginner when you're starting out. It really takes effort because we don't really understand what's going on in most of them. So even if you get surprised by a better prepared opponent in some situation, they probably don't have that much extra knowledge compared to us. They probably know some niche details, but we can still compete with them in other types of positions or in later stages of the game. Okay, so with this out of the way, it's time now to start exploring the different courses for specific openings. If you're watching this right after release, they could take maybe a few days, but yeah, you can start checking uh, some E4 or D4 repertoire as white when they are uploaded, and some defense against E4 and against D4 or other moves. And with that, you can start building your repertoire, practicing it in your games. Don't be scared to lose your rating. It doesn't matter. We care about long-term improvement, not short-term games. So after you are familiar with your openings and you've practiced them, there will be future opening courses here in this channel. So this is the basic level, as we've seen with basic tactics strategy. But after that, we will have other courses. So there will be one course with a opening specific game analysis. So for instance, if you're learning the French, we will analyze somewhat a handful of interesting illustrative games that will explore the topics we cover on the basic course in more depth. And after that, there will be an even more advanced course where we will also explore some games, but we will really focus on specific lines and the theory of each of them. Okay, so let's begin now. Watch the videos of the openings you're interested about, play them, practice, and I hope you enjoy all of the course. Good luck and have a great chess journey.